On October 17th, 2001, Microsoft released Zoo Tycoon, developed by Fang Games, a happy simulation game for kids about building up a prosperous, thriving attraction. But it also had this bizarre dystopian undercurrent, like its contemporary Roller Coaster Tycoon, which featured accidentally killing your guests. Zoo Tycoon subtly encourages you at the end of the tutorial to release the lions. Usually, when I was a kid, I never really completed the scenarios. So to revisit it, I decided to genuinely attempt the most difficult scenario, the ultimate zoo. Start at the Boston Harbor Zoo with only $60,000. There's a bunch of goals, animal diversity, guest happiness, but most difficult of all, a zoo rating of 90. So I set out on the challenge. I laid my plans and struck the earth with the first path to carve the zoo into 3 branching routes for land, sea, and dino exhibits. Since we had very little money, I made an investment into the cheapest of dirt paths. About $1,000 of it to direct my guests along a way to a map of the main plaza. Of all the animals, I've always considered lions to be the bravest entry into zookeeping. Majestic, dangerous, and evocative of Disney. I extended the exhibit to the main fence, placed the lions, male and female, and opened a list of tasks needed to make them happy. There's quite a lot. More lions because they were lonely, a zookeeper to feed them, savanna grass, acacia trees, otherwise known as foliage, and basking rocks. Then a couple shelters to house them and possible future offspring. After all, the plan was just to make them super happy, so that they would mate and reproduce, and then sell the cubs for profit to buy new animals. And after all, setting up exhibits isn't cheap. I'd already burned through $30,000, half the starting money, to set up only one basic exhibit. And right off the bat, I earned the silver ribbon for excellence in exhibit design. But where were we gonna get money? Here's how you make money in Zoo Tycoon. First, you need to get people into the zoo. They won't come in if you don't have any animals. So, check. They're in. And they pay $22 each to enter. Second, you need to take care of those guests, otherwise they'll go home and tell everyone to never come in again. Make bathrooms, food stalls, drink machines, benches, picnic tables, schmooze them. But make sure you're breaking even, or else financial upkeep will vacuum out your wallet like my first zoo. But third, and most important, take care of your animals. I've had it up to here with the number of dissatisfied grizzly bears telling me they don't like their exhibit. But the picky guests will take notice if the animals are unhappy, which will lead to a spiraling, embarrassing downfall if you don't keep them glad. That's the basics, but there are exploits. The first of which I built was the Prairie Dog Cafe, a suspicious-looking Mexican restaurant. It satisfies both hunger and thirst, and it doesn't leave guests walking around with garbage in their hands like the other stalls. My animals were happy, my guests were happy, and my wallet was happy. The perfect trifecta for zoo growth. But where from here? Most people would want something majestic and expensive, like killer whales that perform at shows. Unfortunately, that would bankrupt us. Instead, and hear me out on this one, African warthogs. Maybe it doesn't sound like the most exciting animal to you. Au contraire. In one of my zoos, the bluefin tuna, a deceptively boring organism, proved a far more popular exhibit than the stegosaurus. Go figure. In fact, warthogs are among the most fertile herd species. The mother produces 8 piglets, which can be sold to finance future zoo operation and expansion. Thus I bred the warthogs, hundreds of them. I received the blue ribbon for outstanding animal care, despite the fact that warthogs are ugly and horrible. This all brought in more people to dine at the Prairie Dog Cafe. The lions hung out by their poop and reproduced. It gave me enough funds to adopt Thompson's gazelle. I don't know who Thompson is, but these gazelles are doo-doo. They never produce any offspring and die out every time I adopted whole herds of them. They just have this funny animation. As year 1 ended, I expanded the lion exhibit and made way for zebras nearby, who turned out to be equally as useless as their neighbors, the gazelles. Zoo ratings and attendance temporarily dipped due to the stupid zebras and gazelles being unhappy and passing it on like a contagion to the guests. But the fertility rate among the lions and warthogs proved more than enough for zoo expansion, and by the middle of year 2, attendance, ratings, and donations were again on the rise. Sure, you could say it was boring to choose animals only from the savannah, but I saved money, and I was about to spice things up with Stegosaurus, the peaceful, spiky dinosaur with this animation. I kicked it into high gear, adopting the bluefin tuna, the most popular of animals. People loved it. Ratings soared. I reaped what I sowed, selling the warthogs to pay for more popular tuna. And next, an ambitious polar bear exhibit, consisting of water and dirt, then terraformed and encased in glass for the viewing pleasure of our guests. Awards, profit, donations, all momentum driving up our ratings toward the lofty scenario objectives to create the ultimate zoo. We filled the entire Boston Harbor with dirt. We adopted Bigfoot and a Yeti, and terraformed the land to placate them, all financed by more warthog sales. And after we adopted 2 giant squids, we added the silver plaque for diverse species to our trophy case. Silver certificate, most popular zoo. You might say things were going swimmingly. Get it? Our last major objective, create a grand show, a spectacle to excite our guests, with bottlenose dolphins. People were amazed as they tail-walked, flipped, jumped, and played with a ball, all the way towards 17 happiness. I added flowers and hedges to the paths, making another grand spectacle of our entry plaza. By now we had accomplished almost all the remaining scenario objectives. Animal happiness, 90. Guest happiness, 90. And 200 smackaroos from dolphin shows. Only one stubborn objective left. An overall zoo rating of 90. For some reason, it kept going up to 88 or 89, then yeeting back down after time, much to my chagrin. There had to be a way to make my guests happier, my animals happier, my zoo more exciting and adventurous. So I adopted a family of Loch Ness monsters to amaze my guests with the outlandish and the bizarre. But that was only shortly before I was foiled again by a spiraling positive feedback loop, where my warthogs overproduced and now felt crowded and angry, vastly skewing the park score and imploding our ratings. Attendance disappeared overnight, so I had to sell the angry warthogs and fed the guests who didn't like the park to the lions. That would teach them to leave us a bad review. Fortunately, by selling the highly fertile, productive polar bears and stegosauruses, we broke even, and we saved the park from dire financial straits. So guests slowly trickled back in, but still, I was a little more wizened now, skeptical of my park attendees, picky, arbitrary slobs, thinking contradictory thoughts like, I don't like this zoo at all. I'm going to an amusement park. But also, African Warthog 175 looks overjoyed. You know, I was insulted. They could at least leave some constructive criticism. Everything looked good on paper. I had placed trash bins, bathrooms, shows and seating, every convenience you can imagine. That did it. So I hatched my final plan. After all, what fun is Zoo Tycoon without some drama? There's no catharsis or release. So I deceived my guests. I created the best possible zoo, gathering my armies of the strangest and most violent animals, like the T-Rex or the penguin. They may not look it, but these guys can fight. I even created a fighting cage to stage a secret battle royale among the creatures of the savannah, where I discovered which of them were the strongest and most fit for thrashing my ungrateful guests limb from limb to teach them a lesson about being grateful for hospitality. The Siberian tiger was aggressive, but not as powerful as the African elephant. The elephant seal was surprisingly evasive from the polar bear for its massive trunk. I expected the woolly mammoth to win, but the saber-toothed lion pulled an upset and proved strongest among land animals still willing to fight. I repeated Jurassic Park and witnessed the Allosaurus and the T-Rex surprisingly catch up to a velociraptor, then even devour a spiky Ankylosaurus. And it was no contest in the marine battle. Whales prevailed, led by the orca, or killer whale. The stage was set and I locked the gates. And then, the floodgates opened. Take back your planet, Mother Nature. Give them something authentic, something primal, the spectacle they deserve, the one they crave to see. Maybe then they'll learn to appreciate a good thing when they see it, like the noble African warthog. Anyway, now I'm validated. Thanks to my patrons for donating to the zoo. I hope you enjoyed. I'm Ambiguous Amphibian. Until next time.